Hello and welcome to this episode of Pipeline to Profitability. I'm Alan Ferguson. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Service Success Academy. So today we're speaking with Scott Bywater from Copywriting That Sells. Scott's a proven marketing authority who helps businesses grow by millions of dollars. He's an expert lead generator, email marketing strategist, and world-class copywriter retained by many of the world's best direct marketing companies. Now, I know that Scott's expertise can help you with better improving the marketing to your service company. So let's welcome Scott to the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Scott. And before I let you tell our listeners a little bit about Scott Bywater, you're a marketer. You've been I suppose in doing this for a long time in the marketing area, and I'm really passionate about marketing and copywriting, and I know that's your area of expertise. And so I'd like to welcome you along and tell our listeners a little bit about Scott Bywater and what is it that you do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Alan. So I mean, for the past 2 decades, I've been helping business owners generate more leads and clients via the written word, essentially, and with a particular passion for the small business owner, because I saw my father sort of struggle with small business over the years as a teenager, and I can just see so many different ways that as a small business owner we can do things differently with more leverage. And I think small business is the beating heart of the community, essentially. And anything we can do to give small business an edge. The big business certainly gets a lot of advantages, let's say, which we've seen over recent years. So anything we can do to give small businesses an edge, so that they can supply for their families and that sort of thing, I'm all for.
Sure. So copywriting is we connected. I forget how we actually connected. You may have reached out to me, but I know we're both big advocates of some of the top copywriters on the planet. And I always talk about Dan Kennedy, fortunate enough to know Lee Miltier, and some of the the Frank Kerns and some of the greats in out there in marketing. And I've met so many great people over the years that general marketers, copywriters, but I don't think enough contractors are using copy well. And I know it's a skill, and I know there's change coming, and we might venture into AI and how that's going to impact the industries and copywriting. So I'd like to, I suppose, give some value to everyone that's tuned in today on how they can use copywriting and in their marketing for their home service companies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So really, copywriting is essentially salesmanship in print. Yeah. So whenever you're going out and you're meeting with a client or a potential client, you're essentially selling your services. But the thing that really attracted me to copywriting to start with was the fact that you could sell at scale. So rather than just selling one-to-one, you could send let's say a letterbox drop out and be seen by 20,000 eyeballs and have that leverage without actually having to be there, or a Facebook ad or a Google ad, et cetera, et cetera. So what I see working particularly effective for home service professionals, one strategy is the whole SEO, Google AdWords sort of thing, where it's an intent-based search. So if you imagine the difference between Facebook and AdWords, is that if I'm on Facebook and I see an ad for a plumber, for example, I might need a plumber, I might not. There's probably a 97 and 100% chance that I don't really need a plumber right now. Like if I think of myself right now, I see an ad for a plumber, I'm not going to call them because I don't need them. However, if I go to Google and I type in, plumbers near me, or yeah, like that, then the odds are that I need a plumber right now. So that search or that eyeball is probably like 30 times more valuable, essentially, because I'm likely to reach out to someone straight away. So then it's like, okay, based on that, how do you actually structure your pages? How do you structure your ad? How do you structure your pages so that you actually get attention? And then if you are advertising on Facebook, why not retarget on Facebook directly from, so when I hit your page, if I don't buy straight away, you're following me around for the next 7 days talking about, with testimonials from clients whose leaky taps you've fixed, for example, so that you're constantly in my mind. Now, obviously, if you're something like a builder, it's a much longer sales cycle, right? So, but plumber is like, I need someone right now. So with a builder, AdWords, SEO, very powerful, and also having lots of content makes a lot of sense. Answering all of the building questions, that is extremely powerful. And if you have any doubt about the content side of things, there's a book called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. And one of the things he found, he was selling swimming pools, but he found if someone had absorbed 30 or more pieces of content, then the conversion rate in the sales meeting jumped from an average of 10% in the industry to 80%. If they had absorbed that content. So that's where content is extremely powerful. I think it would be in all trades, but particularly those where the buying cycle is longer. Extremely powerful.
Wow. So one of the areas that I really focus, all the companies that I work with and all the companies that I come in contact with at trade shows, is communication to their existing customers, which I think is it's just not, no one's really pushing hard enough in that area. And we used to look, I'm no copywriter, and I've had team members that are good copywriters, but I look at some of the greatest copywriters out there, and my God, we all know what Dan Kennedy used to request for a day's work, and so there must be something there in that copy that I suppose adds to the value, adds to the conversion rate of the advertising. So if we were to be targeting our existing customers, whether that's via email or SMS, how would we use copywriting to actually get your copywriting skills to actually improve upon the conversions and get our customers to come back more?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's something that so many businesses don't do. I don't think maybe we've dealt with one trades business where they have actually had okay follow up, but most don't. Most, probably the best I've seen is someone leaves a fridge magnet so that you don't forget them. And we've all had that scenario, right? Like I've thought, oh, who was that plumber we used 5 years ago? Back when we were living in this location, they were really good, but I can't for the life of me remember their name. I can't remember who they were. I remember nothing about them. So I go and I call a new plumber, obviously, because I need a plumber and I can't remember who they were, but I would have reached out to them. So that's the power of staying in touch. And one of the best ways to stay in touch, one of the most cost-effective ways to stay in touch, is via email. I'm a massive proponent of email. I built my business on email, and I get lots of leads and clients via email. And according to litmus.com, it is the number one way to market your business for ROI. They actually found it gets a 36 to 1. So $36 for every $1 invested ROI comes through email. And let's say you're a trades business that's been around for a while. You've had 500 or 1,000 customers. Okay, why not email them at an absolute minimum of once a month? I prefer, I've done daily emails before. I'm a big fan of emailing regularly or weekly. Weekly, you could easily get away with. You're there. They won't forget who you are. Plus, by doing that, What about referrals, right? Oh, yeah, like, oh, do you know a good plumber? Oh, yeah, Bob the plumber. He emails me every single week, and he's always, you can be entertaining, you can have fun, you can tell your stories, you can, it doesn't have to be just boring technical stuff. You can make it a lot of fun and build a relationship and build a connection and all sorts of things. You can share your personality. I know Dan Kennedy's big on that. He wrote a program that I read years ago called personality-based copy. And I find whenever I put my personality into emails, it builds a connection, because at the end of the day, people want to deal with people. And now with the advent of AI, this is even easier, right? So I personally have never struggled with writing emails. It's quite a natural skill. But I speak with other people. They're like, it takes me 2 hours to write an email. And I'm like, are you kidding? But I'm like that with other areas, right? Like I'm trying to learn ClickUp at the moment. I'm going through that stage of learning. I wrote an email about it this morning, where you're conscious that you're incompetent, and that's never any fun, that stage of learning, right? But so many people take a long time to write emails. And with AI and with ChatGPT, you can now write emails in your own voice very, very quickly. Like once you set it up with the right system, the right structure, all of that sort of thing, you can literally write these emails within minutes and make them compelling and personalized and all that sort of thing. You don't have to sound like a robot. There's ways of navigating that and making it sound quite personal to you, with your own knowledge, with your own content, all of that sort of thing. So that's a real opportunity now for the business owners that get in on it. And the other thing to keep in mind with email, you don't have to be salesy. There's ways of structuring your emails. Like I call it the third way, right? So people make the mistake with email where they either go, one way they do the scorched earth approach, where they just pitch, and sometimes they'll often make sales in the short term, but it's a bit like going out and going out to the Great Barrier Reef and just throwing a whole heap of poison to grab the fish. You'll get some fish, but you poison the waters for later. So, and the other one is a love letters approach. Okay, where they just write love letters to their list and they never ask for the sale, and that can people tend to give up if they just follow that approach. So what I do is something called the third way. Whereas if you can imagine a Venn diagram, we're getting the best of both worlds. We're giving them great content and lots of love to our list, but we're also segueing into the sale, and you can literally do that with each email. So that's the approach that I really recommend. And it's a great way, like let's say you're a plumber. There's probably, if you went through all your services, there's probably like 10, 12 different services that you can offer that could add value to people, even if they don't have an emergency. So you can constantly be sort of going, hey, have you got your pipes ready for winter, for example? Call us up and we'll do this pipe test. Or that sort of, I don't understand the plumbing industry in detail, but I imagine there is those sort of things. Or an electrician, I saw a flyer on our fridge the other day, and it was all about, you can get your electrical box more sorted so it's safer and more secure, and things like that, which your customers probably don't even realize that you do.
Freaking love it. You've thrown so much stuff at me. My head's spinning, and I'm sure all of our listeners will feel the same. Look, Scott, I work with a lot of contractors. In Australia, I've worked with hundreds of companies, from small companies, 1 or 2 trucks, up to companies with hundreds of trucks. In the US, they go a little bit bigger. I deal with contractors with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of service trucks. And what I see is the most successful companies are the ones that are really proactive with communicating to their existing customers and marketing back at them for all the services. So our company in Australia was multi-trade. We did plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, and I wouldn't say we were aggressive with our approach, but we were on it regularly. And I love email. I think it's fantastic, but we know that there's only a certain percentage of those emails actually make it through to the customer, because we don't do the email manually. We run it through a marketing program like Infusionsoft, or I mean, there's quite a few out there. So where I'm going here is all the companies that I work with, very, very, very few of them are actually active with communicating their existing customers. And I've shared a story about contractors that I've used, pest control companies that did a phenomenal job, promised to come back and book us in 6 months down the track, never heard from them again. And I think that it's not just plumbers and air conditioning companies, builders, all companies will actually be able to save money on their marketing, if they even do marketing, by communicating with their existing customers. Now, you mentioned one thing that I had a lot of experience on, because I learned marketing from Dan Kennedy. Been following him now for about 20 years plus.
And
the frequency.
He's not dead either, Dan Kennedy. No.
Well, he's actually Lee Miltier is interviewing him at an event as we speak in the US, and I live in the US, but I'm in Australia at the moment, so I can't make that event. But the frequency is, that's a really good topic. How often? Now, my view, and I'd love to hear yours, is if I was to send emails too frequently, and they're all sales based, I'm going to have a problem. That customer might go, they might take offense to that and opt out. So I think we need an automation, a product that can actually determine the customer's need. Some customers, they might like those frequent emails, but I'm sure you get this. And me, I'd rather send more and the customer have it and not need it, than send less and the customer not actually have the information they need. So I'd like to explore your view on that, because I think emailing is a fantastic way to reach out to our customers.
Yeah, it's definitely a fantastic way. And I think that the danger, in my experience, is more emailing too little than it is emailing too much. So most people fear, I don't want to email my list too much. I don't want to annoy my customers, all of that sort of thing. My experience is you'll do more damage by emailing your list too little. Now, you don't have to do daily, but I think weekly is fine for most businesses, as long as it's useful. Because you think about it models human behavior. So if I don't talk to you for 10 years and then I call you out of the blue in 10 years, you're going to be like, who are you again? Mm. Do I know you? Like, oh yeah, we had a chat 10 years ago, but there's no really strong connection or relationship. Now, if I'm touching base with you every week, and I'm trying to sell you I call you up and I try and sell you my network marketing business, and then I call you the next week and I try and pitch it to you, and then I call you the next week and I try and pitch it to you, and I'm adding zero value to your life. At the same time, you're going to be like, I don't really want to take this next phone call from Scott because it's not adding any value to my life. It's not, he's not considering my needs and that sort of thing. So that's why my recommendation, let's say you're doing email, is you would start off with a survey with your list. Maybe if you haven't emailed them forever, you might do a few emails just to reconnect and build that relationship. But then you have a survey with a list and you actually find out what they want to know. So yeah, if you're a plumber or an electrician or whatever, there may be heaps of things that they want to know that you've got no idea about. So they tell you what they actually want to know, what their challenges are, what questions they have for you, et cetera, and that builds out your email content calendar, which, by the way, you can also put on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or whichever platform your customers hang out. So so you're listening to them, and then you're giving them what they want. And even in the sales pitch, you don't even have to have sales pitches where you do it. You can actually send people, let's say at the end of your email, you could send people to get a special report on the 7 things you should check for to make sure your home's plumbing is working perfectly, as an example. And I go through and I download that report, and then you put me on a little sub list, because you know that I'm looking for those things, and you take me off the main list and you send me several emails very specific to what I've just downloaded, which encourage them to book a time with me. But if I don't download that report, I don't even see the sales messages. So there's ways of doing it which are very relationship based, where to your main list, it's always giving. I'm a big fan of like Bob Berg's work with the Go Giver. So focus on being a go-giver rather than a go-getter, because that tends to work a lot better. Everyone else is out there going, buy from me, give us your money, that sort of thing. If you take that different approach and you actually consider what your customers' needs are, how you can add value to their business, and it's what Zig Ziglar said. You can make a difference in the world. I mean, I forget his quote, but it was something about, the more people you can help, the more money you'll make. But if you go out with that with the outset, and then you just need to know how to then bring in your sales pitch in a very eloquent way, where it doesn't come across as salesy. That's what I found is key.
I know exactly that quote. It's Zig Ziglar is help enough people. You've got me on that one too. But I do know that quote, and I'm blessed with my contacts here, and particular business partner, and the fellow that I'm doing a lot of work for in the US, Joe Cunningham, who was actually friends with Zig Ziglar, as well as Jim Rohn, Tom Hopkins, who I've been blessed to meet. But all of these greats, and I consider Dan Kennedy one of the greats, because most of what I've learned has come from him over the years. And but you may know this, and maybe it's I don't know if it's a personality trait, or is it just some people are good with this. Me and my daughter Taylor, who is she's an Infusionsoft expert, and she's a fantastic marketer. We both really struggle with copywriting and getting what's in our head into a written form. Is there, in your opinion, is that a learned skill, or is that just certain people are really good at copywriting and others are not? So I'd love your view on that, Scott.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I find is that people struggle to. There's a certain amount of natural skill, I think, with everything. Like I'm far more natural with, let's say, copywriting than I am with, IT or technical or that sort of thing. However, what I've found works really well from a copy perspective is most people might struggle writing, but they don't struggle with talking. So, like Matt Fury had a saying that says, "Talk right, talk right, talk right." So you just get there and you just start talking. Like if I ask you now, what can a plumber do to grow their business? I'm sure you could talk without even thinking, because you probably answered that question so many times. So if you just talk and you write, you just talk it, and then you write what you talk. You talk it, then you write what you talk. So that's the old school way, right? So that's pre-2023. Now in 2023, what you can do is you can actually talk it, and with the right prompting from platforms like ChatGPT, we can turn that into a really compelling email. So we use ChatGPT and combine it with transcripts from places like Otter to then turn that into a really incredible email. So that's something which is which I'm finding is working really well for some of my clients at the moment. I recently had a client that I took through this process, and I sort of coached them on it. And they're selling an $8,000 product. I think they had a email list of about 1,500. And he emailed me the other day, and he goes, "Oh, the first email we sent out, we got 2 leads, and the second one we got, second email we sent out, we got 1 lead from which isn't bad for an $8,000 product. They downloaded the report, and I think they responded to one of the follow-up emails when they were taken onto the sublist. So yeah, it can be very, very effective, but yeah, if you make it conversational, that talk right, that's what I find works really well for most people.
I was always taught, like and we're on the email conversation, which I think is a good one. I always taught how important the headline was, as well as the offer, unique selling proposition, and all of that. So we're probably got a few more minutes, Scott. So from your perspective, if you were to give some solid advice to, the plumbers and the air conditioning technicians, or anyone that's on this podcast, to actually help them to grow their business by copywriting, where would you say they would need to focus in on? Where would be the area of the lowest hanging fruit in your view?
Yeah, so it depends on where their business is at. So if their business has been around for a long time and they've got a large email list, for example, I would focus on that. Both in 2 ways. I would do direct emails to their list based on the strategies which we've discussed so far. Just quite frankly, because it's the fastest path to the sale, and the cost is negligible. You don't have to pay advertising costs, all that sort of thing. You've already got that list there. But you can also advertise via retargeting ads on Facebook to your customers as well. So that's what I would tend to do. If you've been around for a while, that's probably the lowest risk way to get some more clients. So if you haven't been around for a while, let's say you're in the startup mode, for example, then what I would tend to be doing is going more along the Google AdWords type approach and the SEO sort of approach. So you could, quite frankly, get a page up, which is a hard-hitting direct response page, which covers their objections, explains what makes you different, et cetera, run an ad from AdWords to that page, and then do retargeting ads for anyone who doesn't respond to that page by following them around on Facebook. So there's a couple of strategies. A longer term strategy is obviously the SEO strategy, where you're creating lots and lots of content. You're getting that content out there in the marketplace, and then people are then building so much trust with you, where they reach out with you, which is what email does as well, Alan. I've had people, they've received like 150 emails from me, and they eventually reach out, and the trust there is just so much better than it is with a cold lead.
Fantastic. Some great advice there. And, I look, with having a larger company in Sydney, we used to do a lot of, we did paid ads, we did a lot of SEO, fridge magnets. Probably no one's put more fridge magnets out there than me and my companies. Millions and millions were distributed. They were always one of my favorite ways of getting phone calls, but it was well thought out copy. There was an offer on there, on not only on the card but the magnet. There was a testimonial on the back. So we put a lot of energy into it, and it's a bit like, we go back to the Yellow Pages days, and the difference between the ads that got the phone calls and the ads that didn't. And how would you know if you didn't test or split test? Was the copy, the offer and the copy. And and it's exactly the same with everything we do in the digital world. But, and I've been saying this for years, there is still a place for direct mail. And I still think the direct mail, mailing a a piece to your existing customers, there's still power in that, because how often do you get a letter in the mail that's actually got something, and there might be a little gift in there or something, but that stuff's powerful. And I think, everyone's looking. Facebook's phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. Facebook for the audience that I'm looking for is an amazing tool. And I'm working with contractors who are they're getting calls from Facebook, and it's so much cheaper in the plumbing space, particularly. And I'm not too sure, and also in the air conditioning space, Google realized that the certain words are well sought after, and the price is just phenomenal. And an example of that would be when we first started playing with Google AdWords, and we were one of the first contractors in Australia, and even working with a lot of companies in the US that was playing around with AdWords. Now we were buying leads for $25 in the beginning, which is unheard of now in the service industry space. The last time I checked, that is about 10 times more expensive to get a really good lead via paid ads. And a lot of contractors don't actually have the right conversion in their website. They haven't got the offer, and they're bringing people into their website without the right copy there. So that's probably, I'm happy to go for a few more minutes if you want to expand on that, but I don't think I'm selling this well enough, that how important copywriting is to everything that we do. So I'll probably let you conclude on that, and then we'll get you to share all your contact details with everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the best way to think about it is any copywriting that you do is like, we all know, if like most plumbers, tradespeople, my question is, would you get your apprentice to sell to a client? So would you get, instead, if you've got a job for like 10 grand or something that you're going to go in there and fix all their plumbing and that sort of thing, would you get your apprentice to sell that job, or would you sell that job? Most likely it would be you who sells that job. Why? Because you're a better salesperson, right? So you don't send your apprentice out to sell. Now, when it comes to then transferring that salesmanship to the printed, to the printed word, most people aren't experts in that. So how do we replicate us in the sales process and put that into the printed word? And that's where you need the effective copy. And you can literally take yourself, because like the way that we do copy is we interview the client and transcribe that interview. So it's very much your language, your skill, your knowledge, your unique selling proposition, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to keep in mind. But absolutely. And the other thing is, you're going to pay exactly the same. So from a Google AdWords perspective, you will pay exactly the same for the click, whether that converts at 1% or whether it converts at 10%. The cost per click is exactly the same. Okay, so let's say you're paying $5 a lead. Okay, if that converts at 1%, you're paying $5 a click. Sorry, if that converts at 1%, you're paying $500 for that lead. If that converts at 10%, you're paying $50 for the lead. And particularly AdWords, because AdWords is quite expensive, right? But the same applies right across the board. Is that it's just having that expertise that pays for itself just through the higher conversion. Otherwise, it's like pouring water into a bucket, and it's got holes in the bucket. And to your point, Alan, regarding direct mail, like I received direct mail from we got some plumbing, had a plumber in recently. They were actually quite good, and they actually had. Then I found like they were sending out direct mail afterwards, like their brochures and all that sort of thing. I was quite impressed that they did that. So it still does happen. And I'm a big believer in physical mail. I think it's very, very powerful, particularly if you've got a high average value of a client, because it's the best way to cut through. There's nothing in your email inbox. You do admittedly have a lot of people vying for your attention, but in your mailbox, you don't. So you will pay a premium to get something in the mailbox, but you will definitely get that cut through and get more attention and eyeballs, from that physical piece of mail.
That's the importance of testing and split testing everything we do. And that's probably one of the areas that I coach contractors the most, is knowing their numbers, knowing and I learned this years ago from my first coach. I think it was Action International, Brad Sugars, and just learning to test everything. And that's why I made decisions really early on Yellow Pages, because we didn't have a good ad, we didn't have good copy. It was like, I'm a plumber, call me, that sort of stuff. We're talking probably 25 years ago or however long. And then when we tested the results, we realized that every phone call was costing us about $500. So when we knew that, and then we took our marketing dollars to areas that were costing $25, it made a big difference. But this has been fantastic, Scott. I really do appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and you've got plenty. And so now it's besides that book recommendation, I know you touched on a book, but there's got to be a book that you can recommend to our listeners that's going to help them with their skills, and how does the world get in contact with Scott Bywater?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, in terms of a book recommendation, I mean, I think a really good solid book, which will sort of give you the fundamentals of some of this sort of thing, is like The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. I'm sure you've read that, Alan. And it's simple. It's not overly complex to read. It's short, so you can throw it in your van and just sort of pick it up between jobs. And there's not lots, but there's a handful of really good examples in that book too, which you could take and look at how you could apply to your business. So I think that's a really good one to start with. And yeah, if anyone would like to get in touch with me, I mean, there's a couple of ways. If you'd like to, I've got a report which you can grab at. It's all about AI email copywriting. So if you go to simpleemailroi.com/AI. So if you go to simpleemailroi.com/AI, then it's called the Ultimate AI Email Writing Cheat Sheets. And you'll get openers that will grab readers' attention, solution prompts, and powerful commands that you can use when using AI to write emails. Or if you just like to reach out to me, find out more about what I do, just go to copywritingthatsells.com.au. And that's how you can reach me, or just send me a direct email to scott@copywritingthatsells.com.au.
Well, thank you, Scott. That's been fantastic. I will put all that information into the show notes. And for everyone that's joined in today, I hope you've got some value from my man Scott Bywater. And you now have his contact details. You can reach out to him directly. So that's a wrap for Pipeline to Profitability podcast. And everyone have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you having me on your podcast.